And you mentioned on this podcast a conversation you had with another manager around the league that was kind of saying the fear that was coming of like the Florida Panthers, the sleeping giant.
Yes.
They've awoken.
Yes.
They are wide awake.
Now everybody wants them to go back to bed.
Yeah, I don't think that's happening. No, they'll be
take some
all-nighters at the elbow room now.
To sleep.
All-nighters at the elbow room.
As an organization, go back to sleep. Greer, by the way, it was funny. We interviewed him, and he was holding his son Jackson, and Jackson had a bandage on his right hand. I guess he burned himself, so he has a small burn. And we were kind of joking that's a true hockey player's son. Like he's wearing a bandage in June. Like that's what a hockey player is. Yeah. He was kind of laughing about it. Beautiful, cute kid. But it's interesting, Kyle. We sit here and we look at this, and it was 7 games last year, and it was 6 games this year. But all the Panthers vets like Rodriguez and Bennett and Reinhart, the ones we talked to, they said that this year was harder. Last year, they said it was a lot of emotion. This year, it was interesting. Like some of the players were saying, and some of the coaches were saying that it was almost like when they were losing games in November. Like they were like, "How are we losing? Why are we losing?" Like they were so determined to repeat, and they put so much pressure on themselves to repeat that I think it added. I would have thought it would be the obvious. I would think like once I win, I'm still driven to win, but I know I can get there. Like I have that feeling of some satisfaction. These guys almost sounded like the reverse. They were so driven to win a second time that they really pushed themselves into a state of we're not enjoying this as much because we just refuse to lose the second time. It was interesting hearing them talk about it.
Right. And actually who Paul Maurice reached out to in terms of handling the year after winning was Jim Rutherford, who, of course, he has a long, long history with. And I guess one of the things that Rutherford told him that really stuck with him was, look, you're not going to like anything about your team's game until at least just before Christmas. So get that through your head right away. If things aren't clicking early, don't think suddenly your team's no good. So I think that did a lot, at least for the head coach, in helping settle his mind as they started to navigate after winning a championship and having to climb that mountain for the second time.
I'm glad you told me that, because Rodriguez was one of the guys who said that in November. I was like, we're terrible.
Right. Well, I remember
what you're talking about. Very
totally. And I was down there when Toronto had come through there end of November, and you could sense like the tension a little bit. Not it wasn't totally artificial, but there was a little bit of tension there of like, okay, it's time to right the ship a bit. It was right around that time. But they got it figured out, and man, oh man, this was another quintessential Florida Panther clinic on Tuesday night, Elliotte. Like, I don't know how else you want to look at it. I mean, you and David have been all over the multiple goal first periods all series for Florida. It continued here in Game 6. I thought it's remarkable that the Oilers came back against Florida twice in this series, but it just, to do it another time, seemed next to impossible. So what did you think about how this game itself ultimately played out?
I mean, it was... The only way you can say it from an Edmonton point of view was it was incredibly disappointing. Like, you could see McDavid when he spoke to the media. Like, last year, he was devastated. Right?
Yes.
And
heartbroken versus angry.
Yes, this year he was angry. And even though the Panthers say it was harder, because I think the pressure that they put on themselves all the way through, I think Edmonton would feel, and not only because it was Game 6 as opposed to Game 7, I think Edmonton would feel that they didn't play their best. I think every team that played Florida in the playoffs this year, the Lightning, the Maple Leafs, the Hurricanes, and the Oilers, would walk away saying, we didn't give our best. I'm sure in Toronto, I'm sure there's a lot of players looking there, and because they got Florida to the ropes potentially, and they've got to be thinking this could have been us. And I'm sure it's a very hard night among those players watching the Panthers lift the cup and knowing they had a Game 7 at home. But I think that says a lot about the Panthers, is that they're so disciplined and they're so good at what they do that they make you feel like you weren't as good as you can be. They prevent you from reaching your highest level. You know, like Bob Gainey, I mentioned this in the first intermission. Bob Gainey, whenever I would talk to him about hockey, he would always say, if you can't check, you can't win. You know, how hard do those guys check? Like, how many times did they not let Edmonton, like Edmonton before the final, statistically was phenomenal at breaking the puck out of their zone with control. How many times in this series did Edmonton not be able to get the puck out and it caused them a big problem?
Yeah, that's what we talked about coming into this whole thing.
They make you look bad. They have a plan, they stick to that plan, but they're aggressive. Like, there was a play tonight in the first period, I believe it was, where McDavid, finally had a chance to go around Forsling, and they were all over him, like just all over. There were a couple times in this series where McDavid looked like he had space, but they got all over him. I always think about that about Bob Gainey. Even in this day and age of hockey, he would say, if you can't check, you can't win. If you think about it now in the salary cap era, you look at all the teams who've won multiple cups, right?
Mm-hmm.
Right now, everybody would look at Florida and say they're the best because it's the most recent. But I would love to see like a 5-team tournament. Florida, Colorado, Kings, Chicago, Pittsburgh at their best.
Yeah, throw Tampa in there too.
Oh, did I not mention Tampa? Oh, I said Colorado. Colorado's only won once. I meant Tampa instead of Colorado. Look, watch all those teams. They were ferocious at checking the puck, and to me that was, here's the other thing. Like, every stat that went Edmonton's way in the first 3 rounds dried up on them. We talked about the zone exits. All of a sudden, they couldn't do it. And then all the scoring without McDavid and Draisaitl. The